This is Hoot. He is doing his 7th work today, which isn't very much. It's only a week's worth of time. And I try to spend between I try not to go 15 minutes over. Hoot typically takes between 10 and 12 minutes. So anyway, we're going to start off with just our typical warm-up, which is off-leash, on-stock sanctioning. I just want to walk around this pen with the sheep in here, and I expect him to just stick with me and not try to go blow into him or try to run off. I just want him to stick around with me and make sure that he's paying attention to me. And he's a very agreeable little guy. So I asked him to go ahead and send off to the sheep, and he did so in a really nice, calm state of mind, which I always expect my dogs to be like. Kind of their expectation.
Stop.
Now in these first lessons, all I teach them command-wise is to stop. And when they stop, they're allowed to stand or down or sit. And then I teach them out. And that means to pick up your shoulder and bubble off the stock's flight zone.
Good boy.
So here, all I'm asking is when we're stopped in the middle of the pen, when I ask you for a direction, which I only do off of body language and pressure, is to roll over your hocks, pick your shoulder up, and head to the fence. Just like that. Hoot's probably one of my stars when it comes to this drill. He's really respectful. And I've taught them how to pick up that shoulder with the out command, or the out command. Like I said, I don't put a verbal word to it just yet, but I've taught them, how to pick their body up and move off with the pressure. And in these first few lessons, I'm not looking for them to completely take their gaze off the stock and head all the way to the fence. That's not exactly what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for the respect. And Hoot has a lot of respect. He's a very agreeable dog that way. So there he kind of come in a little straight, so I'm going to ask him to kind of redo that. Pressure. Kind of turn the heat up. Not bad. And these first few lessons are going to be in a little tight. And like I said, I'm not a huge stickler for everything to be incredibly perfect. I try to let the dog stay engaged with the stock as much as I can. Now there's some times that I'm going to have to expect them to be extremely mechanical. But for the most part, like I said, if they're respectful, they can stay in close proximity to the sheep. If I do want them to leave the sheep, I've already prepared them with that out command. And that's kind of how I balance my dogs that way. Is so long as I can get you to get away from the stock, we're going to work on a yo-yo game. You get to come in, you get to engage. I'm going to ask you to leave. You got to leave. And we kind of just keep going back and forth that way. So here I back up. I click when I back up to invite them to walk in. Ooh, very nice. Picks up that shoulder, gives plenty of room as he comes around. That's exactly what I'm looking for in these first drills. So, trying to get him to walk up. Now, Hoot's little training flaw so far is that because he is really respectful, he has a harder time walking into the stock, especially when we're on the fence. And I found this with a lot of dogs that, you've got some stock parked on the fence and you're trying to get them to walk in. Well, they're really smart and they know that as soon as they pressure that flight zone, the stock's going to scatter up and down the fence. And a lot of really nice dogs are going to try to prevent that, and so they're going to hesitate to come in. But when we get out into these bigger pens, I can work on that walk up a lot more, and it tends to fix itself. So here I'm going to set him up for that same drill. Going to walk backwards and invite him to come in. Send them on that direction. Rocking out. I hope you guys like my playlist. I didn't realize this mic was so good. It picks up all my music and what I'm saying to the dogs, and so I think in the future I'm gonna remember that and probably not have my phone out.
Stop. Come by.
Good.
Good boy.
Now, with this being his 7th work, this is future me talking into this voiceover. He's like on work. Today would be work 11, and he's a lot cleaner on his departures. He stays out just a little bit more. And he's looking really good for just under 2 weeks of training. And I'm not one to really stand in the middle and send my dogs, around in circles incessantly. That's really not what I like to do. I try to walk around with the sheep as much as possible and let the dogs engage with them pretty consistently.
Away.
The only times I really do stand there and circle them around is when I'm working on rollbacks. So teaching those dogs to really get over their hocks and pick that shoulder up. And when I'm teaching the verbal command for their directions, I do a lot of direction changes on the fence, and that's pretty much how I do it. But I don't, for the most part, just stand there and let them circle around. I really like to get them pressuring the stock to me, walking up, going in more straight lines than just circles. I think it teaches a lot of responsibility early on.
Stop. Come by.
I always like when a dog downs that they down backwards, if that makes sense. So instead of leaning into their front feet, I really like when they push back into their hips for a down. And Hoot is really good at that.
Away. Good boy. Stop.
So if I haven't by now, I'll draw green lines for where I want him to go eventually, blue lines for where he's going, and then if he is cutting in really close and I do correct him, I'll draw it in red. But for my program, it's 60 to 90 days of a lot, 90% mechanics. I have a really intense program that way, but I like to get all the maneuvers on them, all the voice commands on them, so that way when we go out to the ranch and it's 90% natural work, I could still call out anything I want and the dog's going to perform it for me. So they just have to be strong enough to endure the formal training for at least 3 months. And then we're both set up pretty well to have a really nice life. And by walking around like this and letting the dog drive them to me, it's a release of pressure. I can practice something really complicated with them, and then I can let them relax by just, low-key bringing the stock to me. They're engaged, they're happy, it's no pressure, and then I can move on to something more complicated again. And I like to balance it that way. I don't like the lesson to be all, really hard brain work. I like to keep it pretty light if I can. And like I said at the beginning, Hoot was kind of having some trouble, wanting to stay really respectful for me, but also not wanting to pressure the flight zone that much at a walk-up. But we got that pretty much taken care of. All the dogs, all my yearlings, which I only have 3 right now, they've moved on. They've graduated from this square pen to my big 60-foot round pen. And with more space, that stickiness in the walk-up has cleared itself up. So these little minor flaws, if you will, these training flaws in these smaller pens, I really don't try to weigh them really heavily because I know it's going to fix itself. If the dog's pretty honest, that it'll fix itself with a little more time and a little more space. Like I said, this is just work number 7. He's outing, he's stopping, he's walking up, he's doing some maneuvers like rollbacks, learning how to, His departures are getting cleaner. For 7 works, it's really not that bad, and to get super upset over something isn't worth it a lot of the times.
Away. Away. Good boy.
Really nice.
Stop.
But leaving at these 90-degree angles is going to come in handy for when I start doing outruns. And inside flanks.
Push. Push.
And cross driving. Your foundation is really important. So here, just like Sweet, I bring these sheep to the corner and let Hoot have some fun. Kind of get him freed up a little bit, you know, not a lot of pressure. Now, I don't want him like mutilating anything, but if he, you know, feels inclined to get a bite, like I'm not gonna harp on him. The only time is if he's like gonna hang off of something all the way around the pen, I'll start getting after him for that, but should just be a kind of a fun time. Nice little break.
Stop. Stop. Come by. Come by. Good boy.
Really nice departure.
Stop.
I always try to incorporate the dogs going between the stock and the fence in a really tight situation in every lesson as well. I think it's a pretty vital maneuver they need to learn how to do.
Stop.
Because we use our dogs in the shipping corrals come shipping time, and you know they're going to be in a tight facility and they're going to need to learn how to maneuver that.
Good boy.
Now, Hoot coming in and taking himself back out, that fixed itself in that bigger pen too. He's just trying his best to be as respectful as he can. This dog doesn't require a lot of pressure, so I haven't pressured him heavily throughout these first 7 days, so I just take it as he's just really being a good boy. But that's the lesson. Hope you like it.